Some stories are just stories, a beginning, a middle, an end, tidy. But some stories aren't like that. They're wounds. They don't heal, they just fester. And the stories that grow out of them are twisted, strange things, like weeds forcing their way through cracks in a tombstone. For years we've been haunted by a ghost on a bridge, by a grainy figure and 3 whispered words. But what if I told you that ghost story has morphed into something else? Something that sounds less like a true crime documentary and more like a lost season of True Detective. We're talking about pagan cults, ritualistic sacrifices, and a legal battle so chaotic it threatens to swallow the truth whole. This is the story of the Delphi Murders. And I promise you, no matter what you think you have no idea where it's going. Let's rewind. Before the whispers and the nightmares, there was just Delphi. Carroll County, Indiana. Population, just under 3,000. It's the kind of place that's aggressively normal. You know the type. A town where the biggest news is the high school basketball score, and everyone knows whose dog has been digging up their petunias. It's a place built on the assumption of safety, on the idea that the monsters from the old folklore tales, the ones that lurk in the deep woods, are just that, tales. This is Abby and Libby, 2 best friends navigating that awkward, beautiful, terrifying space between being a kid and being a teenager. They had a day off from school. The weather was unseasonably warm for an Indiana February, one of those trickster spring days that make you think winter is finally over. So they decided to do what kids in places like Delphi have always done. They went for an adventure. Their destination was the Monon High Bridge. It's a relic, an old abandoned railway trestle that towers over Deer Creek. It's beautiful, dangerous, and utterly magnetic to anyone under the age of 18. It's the kind of place you go to feel brave, to take pictures that look cool on Snapchat, to feel like you're on the edge of the world. Libby's older sister dropped them off around 1 in the afternoon. Libby, ever the chronicler of her life, posted a picture of Abby walking on the bridge. It was the last picture she ever took. At least, the last one she posted publicly. When their family came to pick them up a couple of hours later, there was no answer, just silence. And as the sun began to set on Delphi, a quiet concern started to curdle into a cold, sickening dread. The search that night was frantic. Family, friends, volunteers, the whole town, it seemed, was combing the woods around the bridge. But they found nothing. It was the next day, Valentine's Day, when a volunteer, searching a little further afield, about half a mile from the bridge, found them. I won't go into the details of what was done to those girls. The evil that was visited upon them in that grove of trees doesn't need to be described to be understood. It was brutal, it was personal, and it was the work of a monster. The town's collective breath, held in hope overnight, was released in a single, agonized scream. But this monster made a mistake. He didn't realize he wasn't just dealing with 2 scared teenage girls. He was dealing with a hero. Her name was Libby German. In what must have been the most terrifying moments of her young life, Libby had the presence of mind to pull out her phone, open her camera, and press record. She captured her killer, this grainy, pixelated man, forever walking towards us. Bridge guy, as the internet would call him. And she didn't just capture his image, she captured his voice. Guys, down the hill. 3 words. That's all we had. 3 words that would launch one of the biggest manhunts in Indiana history. It's a voice that doesn't yell. It's calm, controlled. Which, if you ask me, is infinitely more terrifying. It's the voice of a man who is absolutely certain of the power he holds in that moment. Libby gave law enforcement the killer's face and his voice. A final, heroic act from beyond the grave. It should have been a slam dunk. The case should have been solved in a week. But it wasn't. Instead, what followed was a masterclass in confusion. First, they released a sketch of a man who looked to be in his 40s or 50s. Then, years later, they released a second, completely different sketch of a much younger man, telling the public to now focus on this guy, Who were they looking for? The older guy or the younger guy? Were there two people involved? The police were tight-lipped, frustratingly so. They said they had more evidence, including more audio and possibly more video, but they were keeping it close to the chest. They said they knew things about the crime scene that only the killer would know. And so, for 5 long, agonizing years, Delphi waited. The case went cold, but it never got quiet. It became a national obsession. A modern-day piece of American folklore. The ghost on the bridge became the town's boogeyman, a story told to scare people into locking their doors at night. When law enforcement creates a vacuum of information, the public will fill it with speculation. And boy, did they ever. The online sleuthing community latched onto this case like no other. Every frame of the video was analysed. Every muffled syllable of the audio was cleaned up and debated. Was he saying guys or gun? Was he wearing a hat or is that just his hair? It was a digital séance, with thousands of people trying to summon the truth from a few ghostly pixels. Several names were floated, some were investigated and cleared. One line of inquiry that gained a lot of traction involved a man named Pagan. Police discovered he was using a fake social media profile under the name Anthony_Shots to solicit explicit images from underage girls, including, it's alleged, Libby German. The theory was that Libby may have been lured to the bridge to meet this Anthony_Shots character. It was a solid lead, and for a long time, many, myself included, thought the case would break right there. It seemed to connect so many dots. But while Klein was arrested on unrelated, heinous charges, police never named him as the killer on the bridge. The trail seemed to go cold again, and all the while the town of Delphi was living in a quiet state of purgatory. Imagine what that does to the soul of a place. Every man who vaguely resembled the sketch got the side eye at the grocery store. Old friendships frayed under the weight of suspicion. The woods where children used to play became a place of sorrow. The bridge, once a symbol of youthful rebellion, was now a tombstone. The town was haunted, not just by the memory of Abby and Libby, but by the living, breathing monster who still walked among them. They just didn't know who he was. This is the point where the story takes a turn so sharp it'll give you whiplash. We're about to talk about the arrest, the leaks, and a defense theory so outlandish it makes most fiction look tame. It's a long, dark, and winding road, and if you're finding this deep dive as fascinating as I do, I'd be eternally grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You'll want to be here for the next chapter of this story. Trust me. Okay, let's get back to the madness. October 26th, 2022. 5 years, 8 months, and 13 days after the murders. An arrest. The name was Richard Allen, a 50-year-old licensed pharmacy technician who worked at the local CVS. He lived in Delphi. He was married. He was, by all accounts, a nobody. He was just a guy. And that was the most chilling part of all. The monster wasn't a transient, a drifter, some shadowy figure from out of town. He was the guy who might have sold you cough syrup. He was hiding in plain sight. So how did they get him? Well, the official story revolves around one of the most damning pieces of evidence I've ever seen in a cold case. Investigators found an unspent .40 caliber bullet between the bodies of Abby and Libby. It hadn't been fired. It had been ejected or racked from a pistol. For 5 years, that bullet sat in an evidence locker. Then, a breakthrough. Ballistics technology had advanced. They re-examined the bullet and found microscopic tool marks on it, unique marks left by the gun that had chambered it. They traced those marks to a specific make and model of handgun, a Sig Sauer P226. And guess who owned a Sig Sauer P226 and had admitted to being on the bridge that day, way back in a 2017 interview with police? Richard Allen. They seized his gun, tested it, and according to the probable cause affidavit, it was a match. The bullet found at the scene had been cycled through Richard Allen's gun. Soon after the arrest, the case files, which were supposed to be under a strict seal, began to leak like a sieve. And the information that came out was staggering. According to the documents, Allen had allegedly confessed, multiple times. In a recorded phone call from jail to his wife, he supposedly said, quote, "They have pictures. It's the same clothes. I did it." And in conversations with his mother, he allegedly admitted to the killings. In September 2023, Allen's defense team dropped a 136-page bombshell of a court filing. It read more like a script for a horror movie than a legal document. In it, they laid out their theory of the case. They claim Richard Allen is innocent, a patsy. The real killers, they allege, were members of a white nationalist pagan sect who practice a religion called Odinism. Now hold on. Before you dismiss this, let's be clear. The vast majority of people who practice asatru or heathenry are peaceful, but like any religion, it has its extremist factions. The defense claims that a radicalized group of Odinists, who believe themselves to be descendants of the Norse gods, ritually sacrificed Abby and Libby on the bridge. They argue that the strange symbols made of sticks and blood at the scene were Odinist runes. They claim the date, near a full moon and a significant pagan holiday, was deliberate. They claim the location, on a high bridge over water, was symbolic of Odin hanging from the world tree, Yggdrasil, to gain knowledge. It is a wild, almost unbelievable theory, and the defense even named names. They pointed the finger at several other men from the area, claiming they were the ones who committed the murders, and that Allen was either forced to participate or was simply chosen to take the fall. They argue that one of these men, whose property is near the bridge, confessed to his sister that he'd killed the girls. They claim another of the men posted social media images that mirrored the crime scene before details were public. They are painting a picture of a sinister cult hiding in rural Indiana. And if that wasn't enough drama for you, the entire legal case then proceeded to completely implode. The presiding judge, Fran Gull, was furious about the massive leak of evidence, including graphic crime scene photos, which she blamed on a clerk in the defense team's office. In a shocking move, she kicked Allen's public defenders, Baldwin and Rossi, off the case. Just like that, gone. When this case finally goes to trial, the jury will be presented with two fundamentally different stories, two completely separate realities. But the defense will tell a much, much stranger tale. Theirs is a story of a conspiracy, of a pagan cult, a ritual sacrifice performed in the deep woods of Indiana. They will argue that the crime scene is covered in their signatures, signatures that police have ignored or misunderstood for years. They will claim that other men, more violent, more powerful men, are the real killers, and that Richard Allen, he's just the fool, the patsy, the unlucky soul left behind to take the blame, while the real evil slinks back into the shadows. This case has become a part of our modern American mythology. It's about the vulnerability of innocence, the secrets buried beneath the soil of our quietest towns, and our ravenous, desperate hunger for answers. Richard Allen has given a name to the ghost on the bridge, but the haunting of Delphi, and of all of us who have watched this story unfold, is far from over. The truth is still down that hill, somewhere in the dark, and we can only